Are you feeling lucky today?
Yeah, a lucky thing happened to me. I found a cute little puppy on the street.
Wow, that is lucky.
I know, it was delicious.
I've got my lucky rabbit's foot right here.
But it's still attached to the rabbit.
No wonder it won't fit in my pocket.
Well, if you're feeling lucky, maybe you'd like to try playing a game.
Know what my favorite game is?
What?
Spin the human.
That's not the game I was thinking about. I meant the TV game show in our next story, Spin the Wheel of Horror. A boy named Tyler and his family find the show very exciting. They have only one small problem. They can't tell where the game ends and the horror begins.
Spin the Wheel of Horror. I stared out the back window of our car and shivered with excitement. I still couldn't believe it. Mum, Dad, Emmy, and I, Tyler Banks, age 12, were actually going to be contestants on The Wheel of Horror, the coolest game show on TV. The way the show works is this: the audience and the host dress up like monsters. The contestants spin a big wheel and they have to go wherever it lands. It's always a scary place, like the Monster Maze or the Ghoul Garage. Of course, nothing on the show is real, but the special effects are great. The object of the game is not to scream. You can whimper, you can gasp, you can moan and groan, but if you scream, you lose. If you make it all the way through without screaming, you win, and I mean big, like $100,000. This is going to be so cool, I exclaimed as Dad drove along the winding road. I turned to my sister. Hey, Emmy, remember last week's show when the mummy chased a whole family through the audience? Yeah, that was awesome. And I like when the other family went through the haunted house and ghosts popped out everywhere, Emmy snickered. I couldn't believe it. Those people screamed before they even got to the second floor. I laughed, but inside I felt a little bit nervous. I hope we didn't get stuck in the haunted house. Not only did it have ghosts, it had bats. Bats are not exactly my favorite creatures, even fake ones. Has anyone seen a Biggie Burger sign? Dad asked. We're not stopping, are we? Emmy cried. I don't want to be late for the show. No, we're not going to stop, Dad assured us. We'll have a feast later, if we win. He peered anxiously out the windshield. But I should really have seen that sign by now. It's in the directions. All I see are trees, I said. All I've seen for miles are trees. Mum glanced nervously at Dad. Are you going the right way? I'm not sure, he admitted. Tyler is right. There's nothing but forest for miles. I may have missed the turnoff. I checked my watch. We had only 15 minutes to get there. Maybe you should turn around, Mum suggested. Yeah, right, I agreed quickly. Dad shook his head. Let's go a little farther. Hurry, Dad, Emmy cried. Please, we don't want to make everybody wait. We won't, Dad said. He pushed down on the gas pedal. I mashed my face against the window as the car sped down the road. All I saw was forest. No Biggie Burger sign, no TV studio sign, just thick, dark forest. Faster, Emmy cried. Faster! Emmy, I can't go any faster or... Dad suddenly stopped talking. That's when we heard the wail of a siren. I twisted around to look out the back window. A green and white police car roared toward us. Its lights flashed, and its siren rose and fell shrilly. Oh man, I groaned. Now we'll be late for sure. Dad pulled to the side of the road and stopped. The police car screeched to a halt a few yards behind us. I watched as the policeman climbed out and walked toward us. We're in major trouble, I muttered. Now we'll never make it to the TV studio in time. The policeman marched up and rapped on the driver's window. Dad rolled it down. The policeman shoved his hat back and leaned in. I turned to the front and let out a terrified scream. It wasn't a policeman at all. It was the most hideous monster I had ever seen. Green scales covered his face. 3 beady red eyes peered out from between the scales. 2 of the eyes were in the regular place. The third one was where his nose should have been. Instead of lips, he had a small black hole that made a bubbling, whistling noise as he breathed through it. Mum hunched up against the passenger door. "Step on it, John," she whispered. "Hurry! Let's get out of here," I urged in a shaky voice, but Dad just threw back his head and laughed. It's a good thing we're not on the TV show yet. We'd lose for sure. Huh? I stared at the monster. His mouth bubbled and the scales flapped. His 3 eyes spun around like marbles. "You think he's part of the show?" "Of course he is," Dad laughed again. "We must have come in by another entrance, and he's here to guide us. We're in the right place after all." Dad smiled up at the monster. "We were afraid we'd be late. Where is the studio? Can you show us where to park?" The monster's mouth grew wide. The saliva bubbled and popped. Then a deep growl rumbled out. He raised his arm and pointed toward a narrow drive that led off the main road. Dad put the car in gear and drove off. I glanced back. The monster stood there pointing with his scaly hand and watching us with his 3 spinning eyes. "Great costume," I murmured, "but why didn't he say anything?" "Well, that's part of the fun," Dad said. He glanced into the rearview mirror. "Better get your screaming done now, kids. We're almost there." In another minute, we pulled into a parking lot next to an old brick building. "Are you sure this is the TV studio?" Mum asked doubtfully. It looks so run down." Mum was right. The building looked like an abandoned factory. Dirty red bricks, a sagging roof, a warped wooden sign hung next to the front door, but the letters on it were too faded to read. "This place creeps me out," Emmy declared. "This is probably the back entrance," Dad told her. "Right," I agreed as we climbed out of the car. "The guide pointed us here, didn't he?" I couldn't wait to get inside and be on the show. "Come on, let's hurry." The big door creaked loudly when Dad pulled it open. He hurried us into the building. The door slammed shut with a bang. I glanced around. At least, I tried to glance around, but I couldn't see a thing. The place was totally dark. "John, I really think we're in the wrong place," Mum whispered nervously. "It feels completely empty." "It can't be," Dad insisted. "All we have to do is walk a little way and we'll find the show." I took a shuffling step through the dark, then another, and something grabbed me around the waist. "Dad?" I shouted. The lights burst on. Mum and Dad and Emmy gasped. I froze. A tall, huge, skinny creature had me in its grip. Grey-white bones jutted through its papery skin. Dark eyes peered at me from deep, bony eye sockets. Its yellow teeth made clicking noises inside its shiny skull. The creature gave me a hard push toward Mum, Dad, and Emmy. Croaking like a sick frog, it waved long, bony arms. We stepped back. The creature made a shooing motion with its arms. We turned around and ran down a long hallway. The skeleton creature chased after us. Around a corner, down another hall, through a set of double doors, we staggered to a stop in front of blinding bright lights.
Let's hear a big hand for today's contestants on the Wheel of Horror, a voice boomed. Let's hear it for the Banks family. Loud applause burst out. I peered out through the lights and saw werewolves, ghosts, mummies, alien, bug-like creatures all clapping and grinning at us. The skeleton who'd chased us to the stage stood off to the side, jumping up and down and clapping its bony hands together. "What did I tell you?" Dad shouted over the noise. "This is the place, all right." The clapping suddenly grew louder. A tall man wearing a dark suit and a swirling black cape strode toward us into the spotlight. Did I say man? Make that wolfman? Emmy nudged me. "Tyler, is that a great costume or what?" I nodded. Bristly brown fur covered his hands and head. His eyes were dark and piercing. Even up close, they looked like animals. "Welcome, everyone," he rumbled
in a deep voice. His long white teeth dripped with saliva. "Welcome." "We are really excited to be here," Dad shouted over the applause. "We've waited a long time for this," Mum added.
So, you're ready to begin, are you? The MC asked.
We can't wait, I told him. Now that I knew we were actually at the show, I felt really excited. And we're not going to scream, I declared. No way. The audience cheered.
Let's get started, the MC said. First, I just have one question for you.
He leaned close to us. His dark eyes gleamed with excitement.
Would you like to be baked? He asked. Or fried?
Huh? I've seen this show plenty of times. The host never asked that question before.
Baked or fried? He repeated. Pick one.
Pick one, the audience chanted. I turned to Mum and Dad. What's going on? I asked. This isn't part of the show. It's just a joke, Dad insisted. Baked or fried? The audience chanted. Pick one. Dad gathered us in a circle. Let's decide, honey. What do you choose? Tell him baked, Mum finally said. It's much healthier than fried.
Time's up, the MC cried. What's your decision?
We pick baked, Dad announced.
The audience roared. Excellent choice, the Wolfman host declared. And now let's spin the wheel.
The MC waved his arm. A tall woman with black hair, red lips, and gleaming sharp teeth pulled a huge wheel on stage. The wheel was divided into sections, like a pie. Each section had the name of a place written on it. The Haunted House, Slayland, the Hotel for Ghouls, the Tunnel of Terror, Monster Mall, and Gross National Park. The tall woman waved us toward the wheel. We all took hold of the big handle and pulled down hard. The audience clapped as the wheel spun around and around, fast at first, then slower and slower. The pointer hovered over the haunted house. I crossed my fingers that it wouldn't stop. Then the wheel inched around a little more to Slayland. Finally, the wheel stopped.
The Hotel for Ghouls, the host announced. All right, here we go.
He waved his arms toward the back of the stage. A curtain rose, revealing a hotel lobby, an old, deserted hotel lobby. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling and draped across the front desk. Dead plants stood in grimy pots. The wall had rows of small cubby holes, mailboxes for the guests. Greenish-brown slime oozed from one of them. The rug was torn and stained. The elevator doors were cracked and rusted. Here we go, I thought. All we have to do is keep our mouths shut and we'll win the game.
Check into the Hotel for Ghouls, the host declared. We hope you check out.
He turned and strode away. Then a wall came up between us and the audience. Everything grew silent. Hello? Dad called out. Anybody here? No answer. We crept forward. The floorboards creaked. Something is going to happen, I told myself. Something really scary. Get ready for it, Tyler, and don't scream. Hello? Dad called again. A little silver bell sat on the desk. On top of it was a skeleton hand. The bony forefinger rested on the bell. Oh man, a stupid plastic hand, I thought. That definitely won't make me scream. I shoved the hand away and banged on the bell. A puff of dust rose up. A black spider scurried over the desk and disappeared into a crack. Nobody appeared. Ring it again, Emmy murmured. I reached toward the bell and froze. Something wrapped itself around my leg, under my jeans, right above my ankle, something smooth and dry and alive. I felt it wriggling slowly upward, climbing my leg. I jumped back, my heart pounding in terror, and opened my mouth to scream. Emmy clamped her hand over my mouth. What's wrong with you? She whispered. You can't scream yet. The game just started. I yanked her hand away. There's something on my leg. Stop trying to scare. Emmy stopped. Her eyes grew wide. Me too, she cried. Something's on mine too. I gulped. Then I carefully reached down and stuck my hand under the cuff of my jeans. I whipped my hand out and gasped. A long, skinny, black snake wriggled through my fingers. Keep cool, I told myself. It's rubber, that's all. Don't scream. It's all part of the game. Emmy let out a squeak. I turned to her. She held a snake too. I grabbed hers and flung them both away. Then I took a deep breath. The floor, it appeared to move. Oh, I let out a roar as I saw dozens of snakes writhing across the floor. Hundreds of wriggling, hissing, twisting snakes. Emmy let out another squeak. I bit my lip to keep from screaming. We both backed away and bumped against the desk. As I turned to pull myself up, I saw Mum and Dad. They stood against one of the lobby walls, mouths open in horror as snakes twisted around their ankles. Before I could move, another snake began to slither up my leg. This one was bigger than the others, long and fat, with orange speckles and beady black eyes. It squirmed quickly up my leg and coiled itself around my left shoulder. "Tyler!" Emmy shouted. "They're pulling me down!" "Me too," I choked out. Snakes covered my legs like tight rubber bands, pulling and tugging. My knees buckled. I grabbed hold of the desk to keep from being dragged down. Then another fat snake crawled up, wrapped around my right arm, and began to pull hard. My fingers started slipping off the edge of the desk. I began to sag. My knees touched the floor. A snake slithered up my back and began to coil around my neck. Its dry skin rasped against my throat. Its tongue flickered in and out. Cold black eyes stared into mine as it bared its sharp fangs at my face. Snakes swarmed up my arms and across my back. They wrapped themselves around me and began to squeeze tighter and tighter. My whole family was covered in a sea of tangled, hissing snakes. I can't hang on, I thought. I'm falling. I'll be buried alive. I swayed back and forth with dizziness. My eyes bulged. Everything grew fuzzy and dark. I couldn't breathe. A scream of terror was building inside me, way down in my chest, forcing its way up my throat. Don't do it, I told myself. They want you to scream. If you scream, you lose. Don't give in. Get on top of the desk, I instructed myself. Then maybe you can pull them off. Gasping for air, I reached up and grabbed hold of the snake that twisted around my neck. It writhed and hissed at me in fury. Its tongue flickered against my palm. I gritted my teeth and yanked as hard as I could. The snake whipped back and forth, hunching its thick body and trying to fling itself out of my grip. I held on tight and tugged again. The snake kept fighting, but I finally unwound it from around my neck and flung it away. I sucked in a deep breath of air. Then I grabbed hold of the desk and dragged myself onto the top. I yanked a snake off my wrist and tossed it to the floor. Then I started peeling them from around my legs and arms. "Tyler!" Emmy called out. "Help me!" I turned to her. A snake had wound itself around Emmy's head like a bandana. I reached down, grabbed Emmy's hand, and pulled her up onto the desk. The snake whipped its head around and glared at me. I grabbed it behind its eyes, yanked it loose, and threw it onto the floor. As Emmy and I began unwinding the snakes from around our legs, we both tried not to scream. Emmy made little squeaking sounds. I clenched my teeth. Finally, we got all the snakes loose. For a moment, the snakes swarmed around the desk, trying to climb up, but finally, they slithered away. "Do you think they're gone for good?" Emmy asked breathlessly. I shrugged. "I don't know. I hope so." "Were they real?" Emmy asked. "They felt so real." "I don't know," I admitted. "They couldn't be real. It's only a TV show, right?" I turned to Mum and Dad. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Mum? Dad?" They were gone. "Where are they?" Emmy cried. "The last time I saw them, they were surrounded by snakes, but the snakes are gone and Mum and Dad wouldn't just wander away and leave us." "Come on, let's look around," I said. "They've got to be here somewhere." Emmy and I hopped down from the desk and began to search the lobby. As I walked across the dusty rug, something brushed against my face. I gasped. "What?" Emmy cried. "What is it?" I held my breath and reached my hands up to something soft and sticky clinging to my skin. "It's a cobweb," I muttered. "Just a cobweb." I peeled the cobweb off and wiped my fingers on my jeans. At least there wasn't a spider in it. "Mum? Dad?" Emmy called softly. "Tyler, where are they?" Shh. I held my finger to my lips. I heard something. We both stood still, listening. In the distance, we heard a low hum. A motor. "The elevator," I cried. "Come on, maybe Mum and Dad are on it." We rushed over to the elevator and waited. We heard a grinding, thumping sound. Then it stopped. The elevator doors creaked and groaned and slowly slid open. Inside stood the elevator operator, alone. He wore a red uniform with gold buttons, a red cap, and a black brim that threw a shadow across his face.
Can I take you to your room?
He croaked. I started to get in, but Emmy grabbed my arm. Is the game almost over? She asked the elevator operator. The guy shook his head.
Get in. The game is just beginning.
Big deal, I thought. We made it through the snakes, didn't we? Anything else will be a piece of cake.
Get in, the guy repeated. Room 13.
Are our parents up in the room? I asked.
Maybe, he rumbled. Get in and you'll see.
The guy's voice gave me the creeps, but I knew it was just part of the show. No way would I scream over that. We stepped into the elevator. The doors creaked shut. The humming noise started. As the car began to rise, the operator turned to us. I gasped. So did Emmy. One side of the guy's face was normal. Dark eyebrow, blue eyes, mustache, grinning mouth. But the other half was a total mess. The eyeball hung out of its socket, oozing thick yellow slime. A scar ran through the eyebrow and down to the lips. Half the teeth were cracked and covered with green fuzz. Maybe we'll just get off on the second floor and take the stairs the rest of the way up. I choked out. The guy took a step forward. Emmy and I pressed against the back wall. The guy took another step. I felt like screaming, but I kept my mouth shut and swallowed hard. The guy came closer and the light went out. Emmy squeaked. I clenched my teeth, then I slid along the wall, trying to keep away from the elevator operator. Where was he? I couldn't see a thing. Emmy? I called out. No answer. Emmy, are you there? Fingers brushed against my shoulder. I jumped. Emmy? I yelled. Here I am, she replied, grabbing my hand. But the elevator guy. The light suddenly burst back on. Whoa, where did he go? Emmy asked. How could he just vanish like that? I didn't have a chance to reply. The elevator jerked hard and began to fall. The elevator plunged down fast. I bit my lip. Don't scream, I told myself. It's just a TV show. It's just a game. Don't scream. I grabbed hold of the railing and tried to brace myself. Emmy squeezed her eyes shut. My stomach flipped over and over. The elevator plunged down for another few seconds, then it bounced hard. Emmy and I fell to the floor. The car bounced up, then down, up again. Finally, it stopped with a loud thud. You okay? I asked. She nodded. Let's just get out of this thing. As I reached up for the button, the doors creaked open. Emmy and I rushed out. We found ourselves in a grey basement room. Thick, greenish-black scum covered the tiled walls and floor. Rusty beach chairs stood around an enormous swimming pool. What's that disgusting smell? Emmy cried. I pointed to the pool. It was filled with mouldy green gunk that bubbled and swirled and made little spitting sounds. Wisps of steam rose up. The air smelled like rotten eggs. I breathed through my mouth, but that didn't help. The smell made my stomach turn. Sick. Emmy choked out. Let's go. We turned back to the elevator. The doors had closed. Greenish black slime covered the button, but I forced myself to push it. The doors didn't open. Let's start walking, Emmy said. Maybe we can find the lobby again. Good idea. We began to edge our way along the pool, inches from the slimy stuff that squished and oozed. It's so dark in here, Emmy complained, walking ahead of me. I can't see a... What? Emmy slipped on the tiles and fell on her side. Then she began rolling over the slimy tiles, straight for the pool. I skidded across the floor and grabbed her arm just before she rolled into the bubbling green gunk. We slipped and slid, trying to get to our feet. As we finally scrambled up, we heard something at the other end of the room, echoing off the tiled walls. Footsteps. Tyler, Emmy whispered. We're not alone. The footsteps grew louder. Here we go again, I thought. Will it be scarier than the snakes or the falling elevator? I didn't want to wait around to find out. Tyler, let's go, Emmy whispered. She grabbed hold of my arm and tried to help me move. We both slipped and slid and fell again. The echoing footsteps grew louder, closer. Forget walking, I whispered to Emmy. On our hands and knees, we began to crawl across the floor. The greenish black slime soaked through my jeans and oozed up between my fingers. It felt like mud, but it smelled like rotting garbage. I could hear the footsteps. Better now. Louder. Closer. Just a game, I reminded myself. It's a game. Emmy, Tyler, a voice suddenly called out. Dad's voice. I slithered to a stop and turned around. Through the green haze, I saw Mum and Dad making their way across the tiles. Over here, I called. Thank goodness, Mum cried. She held Dad's hand to keep from falling as they hurried over to us. Are you two all right? I guess. Emmy and I carefully rose to our feet and tried to rub some of the slime from our clothes. What happened to you? I asked. How did we get separated? Good question, Dad replied. 1 minute we were battling those snakes, and the next thing I knew, a secret panel opened in the lobby wall right behind us. We couldn't get back to you. We've been wandering around searching for you ever since. Never mind that, Mum told him. I don't like this one bit. Is this the Wheel of Horror or not? Of course it is, Dad insisted. Just smell that pool and look at Emmy and Tyler. They're covered with slime. If this isn't horrible, what is? I still think we're in the wrong place, Mum argued. The game isn't anything like this. Where's the audience? Where's the host? We are all alone in here. I held up both hands. Stop arguing, please. We have to find a way out of here before I throw up. Let's try and find some stairs, Emmy suggested. The elevator doors won't open. But just then, the elevator doors did open. And out stepped two hideous creatures, huge creatures taller than Dad. Thick fur covered their arms and legs, but their feet and hands were red and glistening, like big pieces of raw meat. Their heads were the size of basketballs with leathery lips and burning red eyes. Look at those teeth, Mum whispered. I think they're real. I don't think this is a game show at all. With a wild snarl, the ghouls charged toward us. We turned and ran. The ghouls raced after us, bellowing in rage. We raced along the side of the pool and skidded around the corner. I'm slipping, Emmy cried. I grabbed one of her hands. Dad grabbed the other. Emmy caught her balance and we all kept running. The ghouls kept running too, their huge feet slapping through the slime. Holding hands, we raced along the short end of the pool, but as we turned around the corner, the floor suddenly began to tilt. We crashed to our knees. The floor tilted some more. We began to slide toward the pool. Tyler, Emmy called out, catch me! I reached for her, but she was too far away. I tried to grab onto the tiles, but my fingers slipped on the green scum. The floor tilted higher. Emmy rolled past me. I heard a loud splash. Then, Dad and Mum rolled by. 2 more splashes. I tried to hang on, but I couldn't. The floor tilted straight up. I slid down until I fell into the bubbling, steaming green goo. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I barely had time to take a breath before the thick green ooze closed over my head. I felt myself sinking. I stuck my arms out to grab hold of something or someone, but all I felt was thick, squishy slime. My feet hit the bottom of the pool. I bent my knees and started to push up, but then the pool floor tilted, and I was sliding down again until I tumbled to a sudden stop. Whistles and applause and loud cheering broke out all around me. Huh? Where are we? What happened? I shook my head and took another deep breath. I wiped the slime from my eyes and nose and gazed around. Mum, Dad, and Emmy huddled next to me, pulling green gunk out of their hair. In front of us sat the audience of monsters, clapping and cheering. I can't believe it, I cried, pointing out to the audience. We're back on the stage.
Indeed you are,
the host agreed. He strode up in his swirling black cape and smiled at us.
Congratulations.
I climbed to my feet. You mean it's over? I asked. We win? He barked out a laugh.
Yes, you're definitely winners.
What did I tell you? Dad exclaimed as he helped Mum and Emmy wipe off the slime. So we won, I asked. This is really the Wheel of Horror? Huh? The host shook his head.
What's the Wheel of Horror? This is a banquet. Our annual Monster Lodge banquet. And now it's time for lunch.
The audience cheered.
Let's see now. You said you'd rather be baked than fried, right?
The MC asked. I don't understand, Dad told him. You mean this isn't a game show? The MC shook his head. Then why do we have to do all that in the hotel? Dad demanded. What was that all about?
Well, we've found that people taste better when they're scared, the MC explained. I guess being scared gets the juices flowing or something.
His teeth gleamed.
Anyway, I'm sure you're going to be delicious.
An icy shiver ran up my spine. This guy is serious, I realized. The snakes, the elevator guy, the horrible ghouls, they're all real. This is no game. The MC waved his arm and the black-haired woman appeared, rolling a table in front of her. She wore a big white paper bib, the kind that usually has a lobster drawn on it. But this bib had a drawing of a human being on it. She rolled the table to a stop. On it sat a wooden bowl with a bunch of torn-up bread inside. I pointed to the bread. What's that for? Stuffing, the MC licked his lips.
Bread stuffing. You don't think we'd bake you without stuffing you first, do you?
He licked his lips again. She smiled. Saliva dripped from her mouth. Both of them took a step toward us across the stage, then another. Dad grabbed Emmy and me and spun us around. Run, he cried. He shoved us toward Mum. Run! With Mum in the lead, a wheel took off. We ran halfway across the stage into the hairy arms of the two ghouls from the swimming pool. Their red eyes glowed furiously as they grabbed us with their meaty hands, snapping their sharp teeth. They shoved us back toward the MC.
Hey, we didn't order dinner to go, he chuckled. Stick around, folks. Things are about to get really hot. We've got a big, hungry crowd here.
As the crowd roared, I stared out at them. Every one of them wore a paper bib, a bib with a human being on it. My knees quivered, my heart thundered in my ears. Please, I cried, please let us go. We thought this was a TV show. We're in the wrong place.
Don't worry about it, the MC patted my shoulder. You'll be delicious, really. The oven has been preheated.
He waved his arm. A curtain rose. Behind it stood a huge oven, gleaming steel, industrial strength, big enough to roast a moose or a family of 4. I squeezed my eyes shut. This can't be happening, I thought.
Thanks for being such good guests, the MC said. And now we want you to stay for lunch. Ha ha.
He waved his arm again, and the black-haired woman pulled open the oven door. A blazing fire raged inside. Flames licked up from the gleaming steel. My heart flipped over again. We're toast. I glanced around in a panic. The two ghouls stood behind us. The skeleton creature stood on one side of the stage. The elevator operator waited on the other. No way out, I thought. No escape. Snarling eagerly, the two ghouls began heading us toward the oven. I could hear the roar and crackle of the flames. I could feel the heat on my skin. Go ahead and scream, I told myself. It doesn't matter now. Scream your head off. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. I turned in panic to the rest of my family. They couldn't make a sound either. We were all too scared to scream. In terrified silence, we moved toward the oven. The flames leaked out the oven door. The heat burned my face. I had to scream. I took a deep breath.
Congratulations, the MC shouted. You're our new champions.
Huh? I turned around. The audience was on its feet, cheering. The ghouls and the other monsters clapped and grinned at us.
You didn't scream, the host cried. You're our winners. Congratulations.
I gaped at him in disbelief. The MC laughed.
It's true, he assured us. You, the Banks family, are the new winners on the Wheel of Horror.
The audience cheered again. He shook our hands. The ghouls and monsters patted us on the back. Wah! I cried. You mean it really is the game show? Of course it is, Dad replied. He gave us all a hug. What did I tell you? Mum smiled and hugged him back. Emmy and I sighed in relief. The black-haired woman closed the oven door. She handed the host a piece of paper. He held it out toward us.
This is a check made out to you for $100,000.
The audience clapped and cheered.
Now, he went on, would you like to take your winnings or risk it all next week in our challenge round?
Dad snatched the check and stuffed it in his shirt pocket. We'll take our winnings. Thank goodness, I thought. No way did I want to go through the challenge round. But we'll also take our lunch now, Dad added.
Huh?
The MC frowned.
What do you mean?
It's simple. We want lunch, Dad explained. We're very hungry. I sighed. I was kind of hoping Dad wouldn't do this. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing. But after all that excitement, I was starving. My stomach rumbled loudly. I knew that the game had made my whole family hungry. I grinned at the MC. My fangs slid down over my bottom lip. Razor sharp, perfect for chewing. My claws popped out, long claws, excellent for slicing. Let's eat, Mum cried. Let's eat, Dad agreed, and all four of us pounced on the MC. We didn't even bother with the stuffing.